Hey, Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl, and I just wanted to do a quick check-in before the draft. Since the draft is tomorrow night, and I haven't put any videos up since the Super Bowl. I just thought I'd go ahead and share some thoughts about that. I'll get to that in a moment. Also talk a little bit about the schedule that came out. But first of all, obviously this is a different angle. At nighttime, I can't get the lighting quite right in here, so I'm just recording this straight from my computer. So that's why there's the different angle. And the other thing that I'll point out is behind me, you'll see my Super Bowl banner. We're trying to figure out exactly where I'm going to put that up so that it's seen in my regular video shot. But for now, I just thought I'd show it and let you know that that will be coming come the season that we'll have for 2018. But first, let's go ahead and talk about the NFL draft. And it's sort of strange that I really haven't been thinking about it much. That's due to a couple of reasons. First and foremost, probably, is because the Eagles are picking so low since they won the Super Bowl that it's not been as much of a priority in terms of what you're really thinking about with the team. You're thinking more about who were they going to bring back that was free agents, and whether or not Carson Wentz is going to be ready to start the season and some of those questions. So really there hasn't been the need to really think about, what holes do they need to fill to get to the next level, because they're at the highest level you can be at. That said, there are some positions that clearly I think are a need that they need to address in this draft. Specifically, the needs that I think of as I look at the team is tight end. Obviously, we lost Brent Selleck. We lost Trey Burton, so Zach Ertz right now is the only real tight end on the roster. I know there's some other guys I think that were like on the practice squad. But really, if you want to get a legitimate second tight end, I think they really need to look at that position. The other question is what they're going to do long-term at running back. Jay Ajayi's only under contract for one more year. And Corey Clement was great this past year, but it's not. There's no one who really knows whether or not he can be a workhorse back that can carry the ball 20 times a game if you need him to. Not that the Eagles offense will usually do that, but just in case you would need that sort of a scenario, there's no real clear answer as to whether or not he could do that. So I think running back. They also launched Patrick Robinson, so a slot corner I think is another position we really need to be looking at in the draft. And then finally, I'm not completely sold on the linebacker situation. I love Jordan Hicks, but unfortunately he can't stay healthy, so I'd like to see maybe a little bit more depth at the linebacker position as well. And then you could never go wrong with adding more depth to the offensive line. Vaitai was great last year, but there's no guarantee that he's going to continue to play at that level. Jason Peters, we know, is on the downside of his career. We're not sure how much longer he has. And just some other guys on the offensive line, like a Jason Kelce and Wisniewski. They're a little bit older as well, so we need to be thinking about their replacements long term. So any of the positions on the offensive line, I think I'd be okay with them addressing them as well. Actually, though, what I'd really like to see is the Eagles just completely get out of the first round altogether. We don't have any picks in the second or third round, so that's a lot of picks between when we pick at 32 and when we're picking again at the end of the fourth round. So I'd really like to see us end up trading out of the first round, maybe getting some draft picks. If we could pick up a second and third round pick for that first round pick, I think that would be ideal. One reason teams may be willing to do that is because they do get an extra year in terms of the rookie contract if you draft a guy in the first round as opposed to later rounds. So a team that wants to get a guy, maybe if there is one of the quarterbacks like a Lamar Jackson or something like that, that maybe is still hanging around in the first round and someone wants to get him with a first-round pick, maybe the Eagles could make a deal with a team like that so that they can get that guy in the first round and have an extra year on the rookie deal. And then the Eagles maybe could pick up a second and third round pick. So for that reason, that first round pick may be especially marketable to other teams. The only real downside I see to trading out really has to do more with just the rivalry we have with Dallas, since that's where the draft is going to be. I think it will be great if the Eagles do stick at 32 to hear Roger Goodell go up to the podium in Jerry World in front of all the Cowboys fans and say, with the 32nd pick, the Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles select, and then have probably the boos and everything that are going to come from the Dallas fans. I think it would be great to see that happen. But like I said, for the team, I think the better move would be to trade out of the first round and pick up some extra picks in the second or third round. I think would be the ideal. If we can get a second and third rounder, that would be great. And then ultimately, we could fill some of these other needs that we have with those picks. Of course, the other big news is that the NFL schedule came out about a week ago, and I took a look at that. And let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule, and I'll give you my breakdown of what I think of the schedule as a whole. As I've explained before, the way I like to look at the season is to look at it sort of in the 4 game increments. So the first quarter of the season, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. And just sort of get an idea of what I think the Eagles are going to do over that stretch. One thing that we knew before the schedule came out is that since the Eagles are the defending champs, they're going to be opening up at home on the Thursday night. So we're the opening night game, kicking off the season at home when we'll raise the banner on Thursday, September 6th against the Atlanta Falcons. And then we go through a stretch that I think is pretty favorable for us. The real test on that is probably going to Tennessee, depending on how they're playing. The one interesting game, of course, is going to be Frank Reich coming back on the 23rd. But all in all, as I look at the first 4 games, I think this is a stretch that the Eagles can really take advantage of right off the bat. So I could legitimately see us going 4-0 to start the season. For the next set of games is where I think it gets a little trickier. And that is where I think that we're probably going to end up in a situation where you've got the Minnesota game week 5, which is a revenge game for them for the NFC Championship game. And it is, it's going to be a big game for them, obviously a big game for us. And then we're coming up on a short week to play in the division game against the Giants. I don't know how this will exactly break down, but I would expect we'll lose one of those 2 games. I think if we lose to the Vikings, it'll make us so we're a little more focused and we beat the Giants. If we beat the Vikings, I think there'll be a little bit of a letdown on the short week going up against the Giants, even though they're a division rival, that I could see us losing to the Giants up in North Jersey. So I think we would split those games. I then think we could beat Carolina at home, and even though Jacksonville is a lot more improved than they have been in the past, I like our chances of beating them in London, since will basically be a neutral site game, even though Jacksonville is considered quote-unquote the home team. So I could see us legitimately going 3-1 in this stretch, so that puts us at 7-1 at the halfway mark, which is exactly when the bye comes, which I think is perfect. Whenever the bye comes right in the middle of the season, I think it's great. Going in then to the third quarter of the season, though, we've got the back-to-back games with Dallas and New Orleans. And then we go into a stretch of 3 straight division games, the first 2 at home and the last one on the road. All in all, if you look at the whole third quarter of the season, you got Dallas, New Orleans, Giants, Washington. That New Orleans game sort of sticks out like a sore thumb, being in the middle of all those division games. And I could see that being a letdown game that we could potentially lose. Or maybe we drop one of the division games in there. So I could clearly see us going 3-1 in this stretch as well. But still, very respectable at that point. If that were the case, we'd be 10-2 with 4 games left to play. And then going into the last 4 games, we've got Dallas on the road and LA on the road. And those, I think, playing both those games on the road back-to-back, that's the only back-to-back road games we have. I think that makes it a little tougher, though. So it could be a situation where we would drop one of those games. I could clearly see us dropping one of those 2 games. But then I think we beat Houston at home, and I think we can beat the Redskins for the last game of the season if we would need to. If it might be a situation where we could be resting players if that were the case. But all in all, I think we would end up going probably 3-1 over this stretch if we would need to. And that puts us at a total of 13-3, which is right where we were last year, and should put us in a position where even if we're not the number 1 seed, we certainly should be having probably a first-round bye with that kind of a record, if not being the number 1 seed in the conference. So I really think that this schedule positions us for a good run again, that we could potentially take another run at the top seed, which then always is going to put you in the best position to get back to the Super Bowl to see if the Eagles can repeat, and the first time a team would repeat as NFL champs in 14 years, and that's what the Eagles are trying to do. So that is going to be a tough task, but I think this schedule does allow that to happen. So there you have it. What do you think? Do you think I'm being overly optimistic with that prediction? Like I said, looking at the schedule, I think they could legitimately go 13-3. Maybe they drop one of those other games and go to 12-4. But I really think this team is set up for long-term success, and I think that continues this coming year. I'll do another breakdown right before the start of the season because obviously a lot will happen between now and then. We'll see exactly who they draft. We'll have a better idea of maybe what the roster is going to look like. We'll know then at that point whether or not Carson Wentz will be starting week 1. So I'll do that right before the season starts. But let me know in your comments below. What's your initial thoughts of the NFL schedule and what the Eagles are looking at for this 2018 season? It's going to be an exciting season. We're defending champs. Everyone's going to be gunning for us, so it'll be real interesting to see how the team responds to that. It's going to be a great year to be an Eagles fan, being able to say you are the defending champs. So leave your comments below about the schedule. Also, let me know what you think about the draft and whether or not you think the Eagles should stay put at 32 or whether they should trade out of the first round, or if you think they should even try and trade up in the first round to get someone. Leave your comments below. I'll check back later. Until then, fly Eagles fly.